Here we go. Yeah. I was trying to think of something awesome to say, and then it just didn't happen.
It's Thursday.
That's my jazz hands with holding something. Anyway. Good morning.
Good morning.
Who's tired of seeing me in this sweater? Yet.
She's been looking for a new one.
Well, I have 2 on needles. I have 2 more that I'm planning, and I started looking for another one. Yes. But you're all just gonna have to wait because I have a million things on needles, and I'm officially addicted to socks. I need to make more socks now because I have regular socks on right now, and they're not as comfortable. I mean, I can't feel the stitches, which is probably a good thing, but they're not as comfortable overall. Anyway, hi. Hang on. Final big cough out. Yay, yarn lung. Hello and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Sun Dragon Sideshow. What?
Dear Becky and Lizzy, they're
Heck is
out
going
there
on
playing with chairs and tables and.
The mayor just showed up, and all of a sudden there's a bang crash outside. Could be completely unrelated. Anyway.
Yep.
And I'm done talking about people outside. Hi. Let's start again. Welcome to the Thursday edition of the Sun Dragon Sideshow.
Dear Becky and Lizzy edition.
Yay! And Liz is wearing her TARDIS dress. Yay! So you can see that for anyone who's a sci-fi Doctor Who fan, yay, me. What you all can see on camera, yeah, sorry, I was kind of passive-aggressively making her stand up. So it looks like the TARDIS, the blue box.
Exploding TARDIS
and
under
then the
skirt.
exploding TARDIS from the Van Gogh episode on the skirt.
Even have a pocket that's the door thingy. So
yeah, that's pretty awesome.
I have a hat, but it's going to be 76 degrees today, and there is no way.
She's got a hat from, which Doctor is it?
It's the 4th Doctor, I want to say, from the
Doctor,
classic.
From classic Doctor who has the really long scarf. She made it into a gnome hat. Yay. You got compliments at Comic-Con, right, when you went?
Yeah, everybody went, ooh, you made a hat. And I'm like, it's not that complicated to go from a scarf to a hat. Like,
but yeah, just take it. Take the compliment. Just be like, yes, I'm amazing.
I made it.
Thank you very much.
The tassel sits on my shoulder like a parrot because it drags on the ground if I wear it.
The tassel is the reason she doesn't hate the hat.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It redeemed the hat. The hat
redeemed
was
the
like
70s colors of the hat, right?
I picked out colors as close to the original colors as I could. The entire time I was knitting it, I was like, I hate this hat. I hate this hat. My mom's fridge was this color, or you know,
I would have been like,
the avocado green.
I hate it, but it's nostalgic.
No, it wasn't even nostalgic. It was just, oh my gosh, I'm going to die with this hat. And then I made the tassel, and I was like, the tassel is fantastic.
The tassel made it. She's a
and
tassel.
so I wear the tassel on my shoulder like a parrot.
Yes.
Yep.
I realized, okay, and then we have to go back to introducing ourselves, even though we said Dear Becky and Lizzy. Yep. I never showed this off yesterday when we were talking about sock yarn.
It's the first sock I finished.
I knit this, and I was doing 2 at a time toe up all the way socks, and I got past the heel turn and realized I was never going to finish it, and so Liz bound it off and said, look, I finished a sock, and everyone went,
finished a sock.
And then got mad at her, because, yeah.
I never made a sock.
But
I just finished the sock.
When we talked about colorways that don't come back again, this one was Autumn from the Cascade Heritage, and it shows what the yarn can do, but we don't have it anymore.
Because they quit making it.
But look at this cute little anklet. Like, you could probably make 3 or 4 pairs of socks if you're only going to make them anklet high, or, you know, slipper, whatever. Anyway, yeah, I went home last night and was like, I'm going to start so many pairs of socks. And then our oven died, and I was going on ribbing on my hat so hard that I just kept going. If there's time, I'll show you.
She wants to do cuff down socks, and they start with ribbing.
I'm thinking about doing 1 pair with the Heritage prints cuff down, and 1 pair with the Wacky Sacky toe up. So if you want some of these colors, we only have like 1 skein left of, by the way. So if you want them, grab them now. and they're 15% off until next Wednesday. So anyway.
That's Rebecca. She's the owner of Sundragon Norton Fiber in downtown Brevard, North Carolina.
On Thursdays, I'm Becky. I used to be Becky in high school too. And that's Liz. And she's the minion here. Even though with her dresses, if people walk up not knowing the shop, they probably think she runs the shop. And I am the lackey, which is funny.
And the minion, which is just funny.
It's always intriguing to observe human nature. Anyway. So, Dear Becky and Lizzy, our version of Dear Abby. We have a couple of letters, actually. We got one delivered yesterday. So,
and one from, like, after we filmed last Thursday, like, right after we filmed, there was a knock on the door from our mail lady. And she goes, "Here you go." And I went, oh.
But we had enough to do with me singing karaoke last week. So, not doing that again for a little while. Now, without some practice and some polishing, we had one suggestion to combine the two different lyrics to Welcome to the Jungle, like the best of both. And when I have time and energy, maybe, because 2.5 days of trying to rest, but furiously knitting socks for myself means I'm getting tired again. I'm still doing better than I was before I tried to rest at all.
Well, yesterday we napped.
Oh my gosh. So we didn't have any afternoon appointments. And so we went home. And so I could get my work done from all the pictures to get the products of the week up for y'all. We went home. And I started to edit the photos. I got to edit them on my phone and put them through several apps to get them where I want them, and then to the computer. And then there's lots of steps. And I was color editing the photos and went, oh my Lord, I can't keep my eyes open anymore. So. And
I was like, we were texting, and I was like, I'm not napping. I'm just going to lay here and rest.
Right. And then I got some rest because my cat was just like, what are you doing? I don't understand what you're doing. So, I tried, and I got some stuff done later, which was good. So, and maybe that lady will come back. We just had someone walk up and peer through the windows because, we wouldn't be open even if it was 2019 right now. I hope she read the signs. Of course, things are going to shift in November, so keep staying tuned. I'm gonna save that public service announcement until a week from today, so I don't complicate the issues too much. Anyway,
yesterday we had people walk up to the door, and for the most part, I think everybody was reading the signs yesterday.
I know,
which was kind of weird.
It's creepy, but good. Yeah. So we didn't really deal with any customers yesterday on a proactive basis. We had a return yesterday, but so we could get stuff done for y'all and we could go home and rest. And I'm like, I don't need rest. I just had a vacation. Yeah, I needed it still. Yeah. My cat is still like, I don't understand why you're leaving the house. You started to set up a routine of not leaving the house. That's all he pays attention to. Anyway. Funny cat story. And then we'll get to the letters. So we tried to go to bed early last night because Brian wanted to venture out early this morning. And I'm sitting in bed on my phone getting ready because I took a nap, so I wasn't as tired as he was. And I was hearing this, and I'm like, what the heck is the cat doing? Because lately he's just been jumping up on the bed, snuggling by my legs, so it's uncomfortable for me, but great for him. And we're done for the night, and I hear this on the floor. I turn the light on and look over, or I turn the flashlight on my light on my phone. He's licking my sweatpants. And not like in a place that you might expect sweatpants to be smelly, like the hip of my sweatpants. Maybe I got food on them or something. I took them off and left them on the floor. I know, Mom, I should clean up after myself. And I was just like, this is weird. So I kind of reached over and grabbed it and moved it out of the way. And then went back to my phone and I was getting ready to go sleep. And then the same spot. By the time I like actually got out of bed to pick up the sweatpants, there's a patch about this big soaked through on my sweatpants. And I'm like, what the? He's never, to my knowledge, done that before. And then he didn't move. He was like lying there and he didn't move. Now I'm like, oh no, because he went to the vet like a week ago. I'm like, he's trying to tell me something's wrong. No, he's just a lazy bum. Because I got him to get up and move, so I gave him treats. I bribed him to get up and move around to make sure he was okay. He did. And then within a little while later, he's up on the bed doing it. And I'm like half an hour, licking my sweatpants. Anyway, okay. I'm done. Sorry.
Your ear, you're fine.
I mean, obvious kind
it's
of
more
like.
exciting than my night.
Well, and then I had the whole like, I don't think we were about to burn the house down, but the coil on the stove, like, was showering sparks, so we're gonna fix that. But that was more exciting than the cat in my pants. But I feel like Avi is like the third like star of our virtual stuff. So because he's the advertisement at this point for all the virtual stuff we have that's not YouTube. So I'm telling a story about him.
Works.
Yeah. And I keep thinking about one of the inspirations when I was doing market research for starting a YouTube channel was the Grocery Girls, and they're awesome, but they have really long episodes. And the only episode I really took the time to try to watch, and I know I would love more if I watched more, was one from right after the Super Bowl, and they started off with a story about their oven. And I was like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna stick to knitting with my show. Look what I just did.
I was sitting here thinking about that the whole time you were telling the story about the oven.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm done. Maybe. Let's move to our letters, and then if there's time, we can show off things that we did. Because the other thing I did yesterday is I washed and dried my anemone hat, like the directions said you're supposed to.
Yeah.
Was that because of my anemone hat? Because
no, that was a cool. Oh. Not.
I didn't know if she dropped a stitch or was excited.
No.
It was an adventure. So they actually in the instructions tell you to wash it with a lot of laundry, or at least put it in the dryer with a lot of laundry. So I washed it with all my masks and my work shirts and my jeans, and yeah. So I'm not sure how different it looks, but it was fun. Okay. Pretty letter that came last Thursday. And I thought about some of these, the ones that I remembered, and I'm gonna.
We wing it.
Yeah. Dear Becky and Lizzy, often I see knitting patterns with 2 strands of yarn held together. Will it work to substitute yarns, 1 strand for the 2 lighter strands, or 2 strands for 1 heavier yarn, if you maintain similar overall yarn weights and your gauge matches the pattern specifications? If so, what is an approximate equivalent, such as does 2 fingering equal a DK, question mark? Bulky number 5 equals 2 worsted, question mark? Thanks, perplexed pixie. Well, perplexed pixie, tongue twister. I mean, the simple answer is yes, but we can expound upon that.
I was thinking, even when we first read the letter, generally 2 worsteds go closer to a super bulky than a chunky, than a 5.
And Liz does more of this than I do, and I would have the caveat that the math is not always that simple.
Yeah.
Because
there's a range.
Yeah, because each like there are 6 general categories for weights of yarn. And for those of you joining us who are more newbie knitters who are like, what the heck is weight? I mean, that's part of my crash course on intro knitting and crochet. Weight is, and I have people do this exercise and the teacher in me comes out and woo. Basically weight is a fancy name for how thick or thin the yarn is. If you want to
how many yards fit into 100 grams?
Roughly. Although there's some caveats to that now because of how yarn is constructed.
Yep.
Like because some of the chainettes will be the right thickness, but the yardage will be different.
Yeah.
So I mean, even that isn't as
yarn's
just
weird.
To be contrary, even that doesn't fit the mold anymore.
There's generally a good almost 50 yard difference in a lot of weights. Like fingering weight can be anywhere from 400 to 450 yards per 100 grams.
And so we should back up just a step, I think.
Yeah.
Because I'm in charge. And one of the craft councils or somebody put out, like, they actually numbered it. So when she's like bulky number 5, they tried to distill yarn into about 6 categories, and then they had to keep going because yarn got thicker.
Yeah.
But about 6 categories that they numbered. Number 1, and some of this works and some of it doesn't, but number 1 is like super fine, and it's like lace weight. Although some fingering weights will fit into number 1. It all gets, actually, no, yeah, that
one is fingering.
One is fingering.
So lace
we're
weight
already
is
off.
0.
And here's the thing, is that not all yarns will put these numbers. If you ever see a number inside what looks like a little ball of yarn, and the number looks like it's on the label of this little graphic picture of a ball of yarn, like graphic design picture, not graphic rated X. Anyway, I digress. Ones tend to be fingering sock weight. I always get off on that. 2 is sport. 3 is DK. 4 is like the classic. A lot of what you find in the big box stores, like Red Heart and Woolies from Lion Brand, those tend to say at number 4. And so we have people who come in looking for 4-ply yarn, but they really mean a number 4, which we would call worsted weight. And there's fancy names, and there's reasons for all the fancy names. And someday when we don't have any letters,
we might get
Liz can do the history lesson on that, because she's really good at that. 5 is either bulky or chunky. Different times in different people will use different labels for that category. And then 6 is super bulky. And they've gone beyond that to jumbo, but I don't know if they call it a 7 or an 8 or what. But a lot of yarn companies, some of them use that numbering system to help you understand it, and some of them don't.
And some of them, they're like, well, this looks like a number 3 to me, but in the real world, it's either a 4 or a 2. Like,
because they'll be like, we want you to knit on bigger needles and let it fluff, and so we're going to call it a super bulky, even though it looks wrap wise, which I'll get to in a second, like it's a worsted.
Well, or like with some of the Noro things, they're almost a thick thin.
They have variants in how it's not consistent, and they'll tend to classify
by the thickest part.
So you'll look at it and go, that's a bulky, really? But there's chunks of it, there's little puffs in it that are bulky, and that's what they, And then on top of that, it's not a magic universe where every single number 4 is exactly the same thickness.
Yep.
Like Liz was alluding to before, there's a range. And so our Encore, which is a pretty classic worsted weight yarn, is not as thick as Red Heart's number 4. And so people will come in here and be like, this is our equivalent to Red Heart that we can offer you in the shop. And they'll say, that's not thick enough. Or they'll take a pattern that that has a yarn listed that says it's a bulky, and then we'll show them what we classify as bulky in the shop. And they'll be like, and they'll either say that's not going to work, or they'll go home and try it and say, this isn't working. Why isn't this working? And it's because what we have in the shop might be on the lighter end or the heavier end, and the pattern was written the opposite way, or for a yarn that doesn't quite behave. And we've talked before about how fibers can behave differently, even if they're the same thickness. So yeah, not complicated at all. But so that's why, in theory, yes to this. And we're going to get back to what you hold double, in general, what you hold double, what it can equivalate to. Well, and that's a word I just made up.
Like we would both agree that 2 fingering generally equals a DK.
That tends to be fairly consistent because a lot of fingering weights are fairly consistent.
However, if you hold a fingering weight and the cobweb mohair that's considered a DK as well, because the mohair needs room to fluff, even though the mohair is like cobweb weight. It's less than
it. Well, yeah, and most people will call it a lace weight, but
it's
cobweb's even thinner.
Yeah, it's so thin, but because it needs the room to fluff, that is an exception.
And I was saying wraps, and I said I would get back to that. Some people will classify if you were going to wrap yarn around something like a ruler, but it doesn't have to be a ruler. But if you're going to do wraps, see how many wraps fit into about an inch space. Wraps per inch is a thing. And so like there are charts you can look up online. I do not have them in front of me. We did not prep. Where it'll say so many wraps per inch, like 10 to 12 wraps per inch is like a DK weight. And see, there's variance there. It's not, well, it's only 10 wraps per inch or else you're screwed or else it doesn't fall in a category and we won't give it a name. So we have things in the shop that are called sport weight, but based on their yardage, I would call them a fingering weight. And things that kind of blur the lines. And so that's where it becomes tough to say, okay, 2 fingering weights is a DK.
Generally. Yes. Two fingering weights. Now, a lot of times I'll put a lace weight, like if you're going from fingering to sport, it's fingering and a lace weight kind of held together.
Yeah. So notice if I had my whiteboard with me and I could write out all the weights, fingering 2 of them, you skip over a weight category, fingering, sport, DK. And so 2 sports held together, I would say generally that might get you to a worsted because we're jumping over the DK.
Yeah, 2 lace weights would be a fingering, but that's like 1,000-yard lace weight per 100 grams. So
and that is the cool thing is that like we have a Super Bowl, like Liz was saying, you were saying before, 2 worsted, you would call
2 worsted generally equals a super bulky, but it depends on what range. Like
it might be the thin end of super bulky.
If you take 2 Cascade 220, not the superwash, just the straight up 220. It's 220 yards per 100 grams, and you double that. It's the thinner end of super bulky.
So you can do a super bulky pattern with 2 strands of Cascade 220.
If you take 2 strands of Encore, it's the same as
1
mega.
Strand of the mega.
But that doesn't translate for the rest of like.
It doesn't work for everything.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is the Encore Mega. The thickness, it's 64 yards per skein. And then the Encore worsted is 200. So 2 skeins of Encore, which is the same price as 2 skeins of Mega. 2 skeins of Mega will get you 120, 130 yards. 2 skeins of Encore worsted held together will get you 200 held together. So, there could be some cost efficacy. The look will be different when you're doing what's called marling, which is holding 2 strands. Marling's more holding 2 strands that are different colors.
If you're doing solids, it kind of all blends together.
Yeah. But the texture might still be different, so just be ready for that. Like, you can substitute, but the look and the feel might be different.
Yeah. Sometimes people have more of a problem holding 2 strands together.
And we tell people, when people are like, oh, I can't do that. And it's like,
okay.
I usually say, just pretend they're one. Like the mohair with the fingering weight of the calliope I'm making right now. There are times when I don't grab them both and I fix it if I can. But if you try to imagine that they're one and not get hung up on the fact that there's 2. Usually it's not a super huge deal, but we also will not, this actually goes into the next letter about like, if you're really not comfortable, we're not going to shove you off the cliff. We tend to gauge if maybe you're kind of like, I can do a parachute, I can do this, then we'll shove you off the cliff. But if you don't want to,
it's not difficult to knit with or crochet with 2 strands. People sometimes, think of it like, oh my gosh, it's going to be, but
don't psych yourself out.
You treat it like 2 strands of yarn or 1 strand of yarn. Yeah. Like, you just.
And for me personally, now I can't speak for everybody. For me personally, I'll get used to the feel of it, and I'll be able to tell often before I get too far that I'm not feeling the same thickness anymore. So I've dropped a strand by accident.
And some of that comes with experience, like,
yeah,
just because whether you're new at doing it or old at doing it, it just takes practice.
And everybody makes mistakes.
Yes.
Even I've had to fix things in my socks, on the sweater I'm making. Everybody makes mistakes. Speaking of feel, I'm going to take a little aside here, and then we can get back to talking about, oh, look, I'm dropping stitches. I'm working on an Alaska hat, and it's too dark for y'all to see what's going on, and I'm going to wait till I'm probably done with it this weekend to show it off to y'all. But I had to switch from smaller needles to bigger needles, and so I went to work on, I grabbed my 4s that I brought in from the shop in the package, hadn't been opened, and I started knitting around on my 4s off of my 3s. And then I went to put the tips together on the same one set of 16-inch circulars. And you may or may not be able to tell. Same set. Magic. Look at that. They're different sizes. I've only seen this once before on a pair of Likes that I figured they just jammed the wrong tips on. I sized this. This is a 4. This is a 2. On the same cable. Right now I'm still using them because what's in my right hand is the 4, and it's determining the stitch size. So it should still work. But what? So, but I felt that. I stuck this in and went, this does not feel the same as this one. And that comes with experience. But you trust your gut. If something feels weird, trust your gut. So if you feel like you don't have the 2 strands anymore. But to her question, if it was a pattern that was written for, I've had someone do this, like the calliope, if it's something that's written for a mohair and a fingering weight held together. Shout out to Cheryl. She's just making it with a DK because that's supposed to match a DK. And
a well-written pattern should say, if you're not going to hold the 2 strands together, and I have patterns that are like, that we want you to hold 2 strands together. But if you're not, this is what weight or yardage you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so we're kind of bouncing around on this a little bit. But yes, I would say if something is written for a thick yarn and you want to hold 2 strands of a thinner yarn together, I would go by the rule of thumb of drop down 2 weights. Like you got in here, Perplex Pixie, bulky equals 2 worsted. It depends on the 2 worsted. If they're thin worsted, because I would more do 2 DK held together. And even then, it may not work. Yeah. I've got a hat, the cabled heart hat I made by holding 2 DK strands together to make a chunky or bulky. It's a little thick, but it's better than if I tried 2 worsted.
The Cascade 220 Superwash
is pretty much almost a DK.
Is pretty much a DK, even though we have it classed
because it was Cascade 220. Yeah. But they've started to label theirs with a 3 on it instead of a 4.
It'll make it chunky.
Yeah.
But not a normal.
And I will say the 2 DKs, it was the fiber spates, the 2 DKs that I held together, I would call the fiber spates DK a heavy DK. It's almost a worsted weight.
Yeah.
So, and all of that is not to overwhelm people with too much information, but to say there's a lot of wiggle room in here and there's a lot of trial and error. And so if at first you don't succeed, try again. But the thing I will take out of this letter that is the thing to hang on to the most is, she said, if you maintain similar overall yarn weights and your gauge matches the pattern specifications. That's what I would highlight from this letter. If your gauge matches the pattern specifications, this should work. Whether it's loose and drapey because the 2 yarns you're holding together are on the thin side of what you should hold, what is recommended to be held together. Or if it's a little chunkier, but you're getting gauge.
Yeah.
That's what's going to lead to success. Now, I would say for the best success, pick a shawl where you can fiddle with the needle size and gauge. And
gauge doesn't necessarily matter.
Yeah, it might throw off how much yarn you use, but you have a better chance of actually wearing it if it's a different size. So, I hope that answers most of what you're asking in here. If not, follow up and say, no, what I wanted to know was, and we'll talk about it again. So, but I would jump, if you are doubling, I would skip over one weight on the weight range to know where you probably will end up. And if you're looking for what do I hold together to get the weight of the pattern, I would jump the other direction over one weight.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think I said that the right way. Anyway, comments. Tell us in the comments if you're like, wait, what? You said the same thing in different ways. I probably did. Anyway, since you're so hard at work on your flaming hat, you want me to just read the other one?
I can read it, or you can read it.
I feel like we should, all's fair.
Participate.
She's not participating at all, right? But you're getting stuff done. I don't get anything done.
I left my paper with where I was, so otherwise I would have had this already done. Anyway, but I worked on my papillon last night, so
I'm gonna drink some water because I'm parched.
Dear Becky and Lizzy, I have been knitting for several years, and I've always been lucky to have access to an LYS to get me started on my selected patterns, help me with confusion, or just provide moral support. With COVID in full swing, I'm missing the local yarn shop support, and I'm easily overwhelmed to start new patterns. Can you suggest some tips and tactics that will increase my confidence and not feed into my feeling of wanting to run away from a pattern that I would attempt if I were around my LYS in the days of yore? Thanks. Having a yarn attack in Hendersonville, North Carolina.
I think it's a heart attack, actually. No, yarn attack. Never mind. It's the having. I knew this one had a really cool signature that I played on the Hendersonville. Having a yarn attack in Hendersonville. I'm sorry. I should just not act like I know what I'm talking about. I can commiserate so much with this. Say, I'm going to start by saying you are not alone. And we hear this a lot. And I'm going to squirrel for a second because this stationery matches one of the yarns in your.
It does.
In her papillon, in her Halloween papillon. Yay! The first thing I would say is again, you're not alone. There are a lot of people who are like, but I want to go get help somewhere. I don't want to do anything if I can't get help somewhere to help me out. And we provide what support we can, but a lot of people aren't traveling right now. And honestly, I think that's a good thing for being in COVID. It's not always a good thing for our shop, but it's a good thing for everybody's health. So I thought a lot about this, and
I had thoughts about this on the way in. Like when you and I learned to knit or crochet about 20 years ago, there weren't places, like we didn't have local yarn shops that we could just,
there weren't as many.
There weren't as many.
Or not as
I had a local yarn shop in Germany, but I didn't speak German enough to go in there and be like.
Yeah, and I didn't have the confidence when I first was learning to go into a yarn shop. Yeah. We have a lot of people who, back in olden days, we would have a lot of people who would come in without the confidence, or worried that they were going to get put down by the yarn shop owner or the employees. And I can't tell you how many people come in during regular times saying, well, I'm not a very good knitter, or I'm not an advanced knitter, or I'm just beginning, or kind of trying to set up the don't expect too much of me, even though they actually were pretty good. I find most people undervalue their skills, which can be problematic if you're trying to do stuff on your own. If you're already kind of psychologically entering the game, undervaluing your skills. And I find it's also human nature, whether it be our society and the way we've been raised, or something inherent in human nature, to not want to overestimate your skills, or not want to be too prideful or too boasting, or it doesn't apply to everybody. I could describe, but on the whole, I find it's it's vain to say I'm an expert knitter, I can do anything. but it's kind of like the difference between being selfish and doing self-care is what I would find. Is some people think self-care, lots of years of therapy on this one, taking care of yourself or saying I'm good enough. People worry that you're going to come off as sounding selfish or sounding prideful. And I am good enough is okay. It really is. So that's where my direction kind of went as well. It's like a lot of people don't have the resources, and it's tough to figure it out.
And sometimes, like with you, gaining confidence with your knitting took fiddling around by yourself,
making mistakes. Yes,
we didn't have the. I don't learn well with YouTube. I just don't, because you can't ask questions. But occasionally I've had to go to YouTube and watch them do a stitch and watch it and watch it and watch it
and back it up and back it up.
Because like you can't see all the angles, you can't ask questions. But when we started 20 years ago, that wasn't there. Like
I did have the CD-ROM version of YouTube to learn to crochet. But yeah, it's learning from books and trying to decipher pictures. And but no, yeah, I would say again, the whole you're not alone. There are other people making mistakes and other people struggling with this issue and fearful of tackling things. There's going into it with not cockiness but confidence of saying I can do this. And you know what? I might mess up, and that doesn't mean that I can't do it. Because I can tell you, like we had to fix Liz's hat. We had to examine it. She actually had fixed it right. I just
didn't know it.
She didn't have the confidence on that, or she was questioning that. And yes, she had me here to check it, which is what this very letter is addressing. Is what if you don't have someone to check it? And we try to offer, if you call, well, if we have the time, we'll definitely try to help you out with it. If you email us with stuff. We'll hit a point where I'll say, yeah, I need you to schedule a Zoom appointment or come in. And that actually will cost, but we try not to charge too much. But we also don't, like, pre-pandemic, I was a really big fan of, I don't want to be a crutch. I want to be, like you're describing here, I want to be a safety net. I want to be a confidence booster that, I'm here, can maybe give you the confidence to do it on your own and not need us. And so that could be what, like, the confidence builder could be a mantra to yourself that you can do it, and just keep saying it into the mirror, that kind of thing. I can do this. Even if I mess up, I can fix it.
And even if I can't fix it, it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you're a failure.
Like, well, you and I, and me in particular, I fight this working here, is because I'm doing it, I have to do it perfectly.
Oh, because it's a shop. Because I fight that.
Well, not just you, but we have lots of people who are like, if I bought it and there were mistakes in it, it would be okay because it wasn't me doing it.
Yeah.
But because I'm making it, I cannot make any mistakes. Mm-hmm. Machines make mistakes. Like everybody makes mistakes. Yeah. So just if you kind of set yourself up for failure if you're like, I've got to be perfect.
The first time.
Even the 10th time. You don't have to be perfect.
I mean, I think knitting is like this, and crocheting is like a microcosm of the larger world all the time, like the life lessons you learn. And I can't tell you how many times as a teacher outside of this world, you learn by making mistakes, like learn by doing. And especially when mistakes happen, well, I'm going to try not to do that again. Like that can be applied to life. It's applied to knitting.
I saw a meme on Facebook, and it was talking about mental health issues, but it was like me comforting somebody with mental health issues. And it was Gordon Ramsay giving this little girl a hug. And it was like, oh, you're perfect. You're good. You're wonderful. Me dealing with my own mental health issues is Gordon Ramsay yelling at, the person who
making
them feel this big. And we do that with knitting. We do that with everything.
We tend to be our own toughest critics. And we tend to judge in others the things that we're most insecure about in ourselves. That's a Brene Brown thing. I love her, by the way. Anyway, she's really great at giving people like talking through how to have confidence and how to try to be enough when we're a whole world filled of I'm not enough of this, that, fill in the blank, right? I used to tell my students, if you already knew everything, you wouldn't need to be here. And it's the same thing with my knitting classes. I'd say if you could do it right the first time, you know, you wouldn't need the LYS. But we need you as much as you need us. And again, you learn by making mistakes. I teach a fix your mistakes class. That's a wonderful 2 hours of learning miraculous things, but you haven't practiced it enough to retain it. You got to go home and mess up and mess up and mess up and keep doing them until it clicks. And so you're like, okay, I've made mistakes, now I can fix it.
And newer knitters tend to look at that class and go, well, that's great for new knitters. Old knitters, like people that have knit forever, don't need that class. And it's like, no. We've had knitters that have knit for 10 minutes and have knit for 50 years. Take that class. And everybody in the class goes, oh, I didn't know that. Like,
I've never seen that.
I've never
knitting for 20 years. Right?
Yeah.
I've had people who started a shawl and brought it into me, and I said, you made mistakes. You can leave them. That's design element. That's a whole other thing that can boost your confidence. Leave the design elements in and say, it's unique now. Haha. But people who say, okay, we've got some structural issues here. If you really don't want them, we'll have to rip the whole thing out. But you've learned so much. It's not, to me, making errors where you have to back a whole lot of it out or start over. It's a learning experience. It's all valuable information, muscle memory, understanding the techniques, whatever you want to call it, that lead to success down the road. I once made a cabled vest that was way too big on me. It was just not going to work. I ripped the whole entire thing out, but I learned so much that it went so much better the second time, and I made it the right size. And then later on, it didn't fit me for other reasons, and I gave it away. But you know, all of it, it's like, I'm again, microcosm, macrocosm. I did so many things before I started the yarn shop that had, on the surface, had nothing to do with running a yarn shop. I have a master's degree in religious studies. Do I use that today? Not particularly, not the like content, you know, knowledge matter of that, but every single thing I've done, like I could look at that and say, okay, wasted money because I run a yarn shop now. But every single thing I've done, working in boarding schools, getting my master's degree, so many different things, all factor into what I do here. It's like ripping out part of a sweater. On the surface, it may look like wasted time, but it makes me a better business person today. It makes me a better able to relate to people. There's so many facets of my life up until this point that make me who I am today and make what I'm doing today successful. Same thing with knitting. Even if you have to rip out a sock 6 times because it didn't fit right, you learn so much. Like I've learned from the first pair of socks I made what I want to change in my next pair of socks to make it better. I've worked with people where, okay, now we understand what the pattern repeat is. So even though you have to rip out all the work you did, you know it will look better next time. I have someone who came to do a lesson at the shop a few weeks ago, and she had all the pieces of her sweater ready to sew together, but it was too big. And it really was a matter of how much do you want to take this apart and redo it? But she had already really made the decision before coming to the lesson, but kind of bounced it off of me of what was going to make her the happiest was redoing the whole thing. And she's going into it with knowledge instead of the first time through going, how does this work? She can go into it the second time through going, this is what I'm going to do. Confidence is 9/10 of the game half the time. And that's math that doesn't work, but you get the idea.
Well, and we have those knitters who come and they'll buy the Encore for a first run of a project and then buy the nicer stuff, you know, for the second run because they want to try out the pattern before they
So I mean, either buying the cheaper yarn or using scrap yarn to practice on.
Keep in mind, that can change your gauge. It can change a lot of stuff in how the drape looks.
But practice, if you're just
practicing the stitches.
Yeah. If you're just practicing, okay, this pattern's a challenge for me, and it's because there's weird abbreviations in it and I don't understand what they mean, but I really love the look of this shawl, could mean that you want to practice just a piece of it.
I did that
with other yarn.
When I was early days crocheting, and I had played with tension for 2 years and finally got my double crochets exactly the same every time I picked it up. When we came back to the States, my sister was pregnant with my niece. First niece, yay. So of course I had to crochet baby blankets, and I only knew single, double, and chain. Like, that was all I knew.
Which I said, my theory is you can do everything with
all
that.
you need to know. But
going into it saying, this is all I can do.
This is all I can do.
It's intimidating.
So I went to Walmart where I taught myself to crochet book, and they have little books on
stitches and baby blankets.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
50 great ideas for stitches. And I went, and it gives you the multiple so you don't have to do the math. And so I went, ooh, I made 10 baby blankets. And they all had tons of mistakes. Like, do not look closely at my fans, because the fans were all 5 double crochets in the same stitch, and some of them had 3 and some of them had 8. And it happens.
Design element.
But I did different stitch patterns for all 10. And my sister doesn't keep things, even though they might be sentimental to others. But when you're given 10 baby blankets, it's kind of overwhelming. 1 or 2 might
make it through.
Yeah. But for me, it was okay, I'm just going to,
learning process.
Beginning of the stitch pattern, it was like really wonky. By the time I got done with it, and they were just little baby blankets. By the time I got done, I knew the pattern.
Yeah.
Whip a border around that sucker and put it in the mail. Mary, look, it's
another one. I made something. Yay! I really would say, there's YouTube that's helpful, and that's great. But it's a mix of, and you hang on to the things that are going to help you personally, of going in with confidence. Doesn't have to be perfection level confidence, but going in saying, I can do this, and even if I mess up, I can do this. I can finish this, or I can, be successful. But it might be changing your level of what success means, or being willing to rip it out a bunch of times. But it's like we always say, fake it till you make it. Be willing. We talk about your I don't care bar a lot here, or your care bar. Is it high? Is it low? Maybe shifting where that is, because if it's really high expectations are hard to meet for anybody. And
keep in mind, we have enough going on with a pandemic.
Yeah, right.
I've noticed a lot of I don't care bars getting set a little lower and a little lower, because so you missed a stitch. So tie it into place and keep going, because there's so much other stuff going on.
If you're trying to make something for somebody else, chances are you're the only one who's going to see the errors, unless you point them out to the other person. But they're just going to be blown away that you made them something. So
and
you are your harshest critic. I say it over and over again.
And wearing hand knit things, it's a great social distancing thing.
You're too close. Get back up.
If people are within 6 feet of you and notice a mistake, they are too close.
If they're noticing mistakes, they're too close. Period.
Yeah.
If you're 6 feet away from someone, you shouldn't, unless it's really huge, you should not see any mistakes in someone's knitting. And even then, it's a design element. It's what makes it mine.
Yep.
So, and just know it's a journey. Like, I talk about your crafting journey being filled with joy and confidence on my tips and tricks video. So these are like general things of it's the journey, not the destination. That's why I have so many things on needles.
Holy crap, 9s are huge.
What?
9s are huge. I want to say those are 6s. I'm sorry.
She just picked up a new project and she's having issues. Anyway. So I hope that addressed having a yarn attack in Hendersonville. I hope that addressed some of your, be proud of what you're accomplishing. whether it is the smallest little washcloth or the biggest shawl or sweater. You know, you're making something, and that's pretty awesome.
Even if it's sticking with the exact same, I'm going to make washcloths for the next
over
10
and over and over and over again. You make scarves for the rest of your life.
I made scarves for 2 years.
You're making stuff. You should. I would love it if you would take pride in that. Yep. And taking pride in something you've made is not being prideful, in my opinion. It is enjoying the process and saying, yeah, I did this. Saying I did this is different than look at me, ha ha ha. You know, very different. So,
and if you want to take it in little bites, like we discussed with one of our Becky and Lizzy's a couple whiles ago, with what can I do to increase my knowledge? Take it in tiny little segments. If you're good at scarves, maybe start a shawl with just a knit one, increase the
a small thing,
knit front and back increase until you get good at that, and then
Wait, don't shove yourself out of the nest if you're not ready. But if you say, well, I think I know how to operate the parachute, take a jump, It
doesn't have to be a big one.
Luckily, yarn is not like actually jumping out of a plane. Yarn is squishy and mostly forgiving. There's a few yarns that aren't. But the most that will happen is you have to start over, I think.
I tell people all the time, it's just sticks and string. Ultimately, doesn't matter how much you pay for the sticks and string, it's just sticks and strings. So, have fun with it.
Have fun. Yeah, definitely. Enjoy it. And if you're not enjoying it, take a break and do something else, whether it's another project or another craft, so that you can come back to it with a little more self-care. I think self-care is the goal here. And if we like to say it's a judgment-free zone here. And if there's too much judgment happening, and again, we tend to be our own worst critic, then you're not going to have an enjoyable experience. And so really just try to enjoy as much as you can and try to be as kind to yourself as you would be to someone else if they were working on the same project. It's a hard thing to do, but it has really great rewards. So I'm noticing the time. We have to get ready for the maybe Viking hordes. We had Viking hordes on Tuesday between 10 and 12. And then it was slow for the rest of the day. So we have no idea what's going to happen, but we should get ready for it. So like we say every single time, we love you and we miss you. You have a chance to hang with us this weekend. We have, first of all, let's do our events, right? Friday night, sit and stitch.
6 to 9 Eastern
Standard Time, only on Zoom with the shop number 828-877-3550. And then, excuse me, Saturday from 1 to 5, we will be on both Zoom the same way. It's 1 to 5 Eastern Standard Time. And we will be on...
she will be on Facebook Live, and we will be
my
on
mug
Zoom.
On Facebook Live, Voices from Zoom on Facebook Live from 1 to 5. So just find our page, I think, on Facebook, and you should be able to watch. So
and
come hang
Zoom
out with us.
Is our shop phone number,
which I just said for Friday.
Yeah.
So so come hang out with us, and if you can't, which is fine, we will hopefully see you next Tuesday. So joy and confidence, journey, not a destination. Although little pit stops along the way to go, woohoo, look what I did. So okay, have a good weekend.
Bye.
Wish us luck with the Vikings.